I am so excited about this next gig. This guy has been on the show a lot, and yet I have never spoken to him on the show. You know him from ABC7. He is a veteran news guy, a journalist, and anchorman, and so excited that he is part of our big launch month. He's Dan Ashley, everybody.
Hey,
hi, Dan Ashley.
Mark, I'm so thrilled to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
It really is the coolest. I was really looking forward to this because I listened to you fill in for me a little bit, like I heard an hour here, 50 minutes there, and I was fascinated by stuff I never would have guessed about you. And it relates to sort of your background and stuff, and I want to talk to you about some of that now. So,
you're so kind.
No, it's true. By the way, does Dan know? You know that you're on this show probably more than any other voice because of your drops.
I didn't know that.
I mean, it's a. Let's see. Where are my Dan Ashley drops? Do you have them?
Oh, Mark, you're so kind. I'm flattered.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Where are the? Let me see. Let me put my drop glasses on. Hold on a second. I have to go and do.
Thank you so much. Kim, how are you?
Yeah.
Fabulous producer, John Daly.
Yeah. These are all. These are heard all the time. You don't understand. I mean, they're heard so often. And somebody mentioned, he said, I don't think Dan knows that we use these drops all the time.
I didn't. I live in infamy. Thank you.
That's you really do. Well,
Thank you so much.
I don't know of infamy, but I think you're definitely, you've got your own level of celebrity on this show.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you.
You're the voice behind the voice. All right, so now I want to ask you about something that struck me during your conversations when you filled in for me on this show, and that was that you were a figure skater at one point. Is that the way am I remembering this wrong, or is that correct?
No, it's true, actually. You know, Mark, I did a lot of sports when I was younger, but when I was, I first started skating when I was born in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and at 1 year old, we moved to Buffalo, New York for 7 years. My dad took a job there, and it was very common for people to build ice rinks in their backyard because it got so cold. You frame it with wood, put plastic. So I learned to skate. That continued when we moved back to North Carolina, and I became a figure skater, competitive, locally, regionally, and did ice shows and stuff like that, and then started teaching when I was in college. And my senior year in college, I taught 4 or 5 nights a week, and I would teach beginners and intermediate skaters, sometimes more advanced skaters. Yeah, it was fun.
So you would lift, you would do that thing where you lift the other skater above your head, and you would do all those, right?
I did. I was 5'10" when I finished high school, and then the first summer I grew about 4 inches, so I'm 6'2" now. You don't see a lot of competitive figure skaters, pairs, partners, freestyle skaters who are that big. They're usually smaller. So I could do ice dance because the lines are nice. So I really shifted to a lot of ice dance. But I did have a pairs partner, and I could tell you, Mark, one of the scariest things in the world is to pick her up over your head, and I'll tell you why. First of all, she was a great skater, and she was a normal-sized woman, which means...
So you're saying she was on the heavier side.
She was on the heavier side, but she wasn't heavy. But she wasn't heavy at all. But
I get it.
Picking you up over the head, she was heavy, but she wasn't heavy. If you know what I mean.
I understand. There was nothing objectionable. You're not passing judgment. You're simply saying, as a simple physics fact, it was a little bit of an equation to get her over your head.
I could be that I was just weak.
Yeah, right. You're saying, okay, that's true too.
But the scariest thing is what people don't.
She's probably saying in her conversation, I don't want to say he was weak, but he was, just not. I mean, he was normal for a normal guy. She's having that conversation.
Not weak. No,
yeah,
exactly right.
Right.
All right. Don't realize
who is having that conversation?
Okay, go ahead.
When you're holding someone over your head and you have their hands, right, because your hands are locked. If you fall or trip or lose your balance, what you are supposed to do is immediately let her go and fall on her own, which is very counterintuitive.
Sure.
Because you want to protect her and not let her hit the ice hard. But if you hang on to her and hold her hands, she can't get her hands in front of her to protect her. So the fall is first thing you're taught is let her go, because otherwise she falls on her face, because you're holding her hands and she's unprotected. It was scary.
So it would seem to me inevitable that there are going to be people. I mean, we see it at the highest levels of competition. People fall all the time.
Sure, you do. And I only took 2 really bad falls in all of my skating, but 2 where I got hurt a little bit. But it was great fun. But I wasn't going to the Olympics, Mark. I wasn't that good. I could do ice show kind of stuff, and
like ice
I wasn't that good. I could do ice shows,
but I was in Disney on Ice. Yeah,
I'm not that good, but I could do ice shows.
Yeah, well, no, not as a featured performer. I could be like a chorus.
Oh my! I wasn't featured. I was on, but it's in the ice show. Dan, come on!
I guess what I'm saying is there was no real career there. So
you're being modest.
Why are you yelling?
All right. Let me ask you this, and then I'll move on from figure skating because you have this rock and roll world that you're into. I want to ask you, when you watch the Olympics, one of the things that bothers me about, and there are other sports besides just figure skating that fall into this category, when they're being judged by panels of judges, it seems to me to be very subjective. It's clearly subjective, but I mean, almost arbitrary in some cases, and then almost like a fix is in other cases. That used to be the case growing up as a kid. I watched, the Russian judge, you figure you throw that one out, and there's like the Eastern Bloc countries voted one way, the Western countries. Now that's changed a bit, but there still is an arbitrary aspect to this. Doesn't that bother you as an expert? You're someone who can look at it with a critical eye. Doesn't it bother you, the arbitrariness of the judging system?
It does. It does. And it's unlike most sports. Most sports, are you the fastest? Did you score the most points? It's very clear who won and who lost. It bothered me when I was competing and we had judges, because you would go to different regions and, you often felt that if the judges were from that region, they may favor skaters from that region, or they know, there's a network of people that know one another. And and that could benefit you or hurt you. I never did like that aspect of it. I don't think there's any other way to really do it. And I think dismissing the high and low score is probably one way to mitigate that. But it's a little uncomfortable at times, because someone comes in with a big reputation, they get a little more credit for their routine often if they're the favored person, even if it's almost subliminal. So there is a little bit of an aspect of it that is not quite pure.
Yeah, right. And you see people robbed of glory a little bit occasionally. I mean, just to put a point on it. So,
and Mark, just heads up, it looks like we've had a light earthquake here in San Francisco.
Oh,
really?
I'll get more information.
So light that Dan hasn't felt it.
No, my internal seismograph did not pick that up.
We'll continue to watch that for you. Yeah. And speaking of rock and roll, we'll watch the earthquake situation. Yeah, right. I did want to ask you. Very strong in San Jose, says Andrea.
Yeah, I'm looking up the magnitude right now.
And what are they saying at USGS?
I don't have it yet. They have. It's not on the list yet.
Okay.
Let's see.
A sudden jolt and small movement after that, says Randy on the
I love
chat
that
line.
Dan Ashley is like looking up news. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Look at him there.
This is
He's like, I'll talk
our-
about skating, and now we'll do a little news.
let us know. Text it from how you felt where you are. Mild in the San Francisco Richmond district, says Katie. In Mountain View, nothing.
It was mild enough in the Dolores Park area where it just felt like a rumble. It was light enough that I didn't know if it was an earthquake. I thought it might have been a truck downstairs.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Well, then let me just ask you, and we'll continue to watch this, and maybe there'll be an aftershock or whatever. The world that you have creatively as a musician is one that fascinates me. I mean, we've talked about the fact, and we tease you on this show, about the fact that your best friend or your good friend is Sammy Hagar, and that was so great when you had him on. I just loved it. Conversation could have gone for hours.
Oh, yeah, he's such a good guy.
Yeah, and you met him where?
Boy, that's a great question. I met him, interesting. I did an interview. The first time I met him, I did an interview with him, ironically, the day after my mother had passed away out here.
Oh, my gosh.
And he was very kind about it. I didn't want to cancel, and there was, nothing I could do. So I just thought, well, let's go to work and, sort of numb. And I think that's where we first met. Although, actually, we talked on the phone years before. I had reached out to him to see if he had any interest in playing my Rock the Casa charity. That's right. I forgot about this. He called me back the next day, and we had a great 20-minute phone conversation. That's how we really connected. But I don't think we met in person until a couple of years later after my mother had passed away, and I did that interview. And so I've seen him, periodically, stay in touch with him here and there, and he invites me.
Let me just double back for a second. When you, the day after your mother passed away, are talking to Sammy Hagar, you're having this interview, you're saying that your mood and emotion was informed by what you had just been through the day before. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it was, and I was still sort of processing. I was a little numb, and if anyone who's gone through that knows, you just don't feel. But I was sort of, I didn't know what to do, so I thought, well, just sitting at home makes no sense. I have this interview scheduled today. I'm just going to go to work, and I did, and I'll take time off, as it comes time to, make plans for her funeral and all of that.
And were you openly emotional, and he consoled you, or you're saying that that's just in the back of your head? It was sort of just keeping you kind of.
Yeah, Mark, I told my wife, I was reminded of this yesterday for some odd reason, told my wife about it. He was very kind. We're sitting at a table at his restaurant that he had at the time in Marin. And I just mentioned to him, because I was a little off my game beforehand, I said, I'll get my act together here, but my mother passed away yesterday. And he reached over and he put his hand on my forearm and kind of held me for a second and said, "I'm sorry, buddy." It was very sweet. It was just a nice moment. And then we moved on. It was very kind of him. I thought he just, and he had a look in his eyes. He really felt bad for me, which was very kind.
No, that is special. That's a nice sort of insight into who he is. You mentioned his restaurant. He's got a restaurant. I mean, I know that one may have closed, but he became this entrepreneur with a tequila company, and I've got a place in Cabo, and it's unreal how he monetized his celebrity and his skill as a musician. Who he was in the music world.
He's very clever as a business person. He's a phenomenal musician. He just released a new song that I just love called "Father Time," which is it really speaks to him getting older, and it's a very personal song. But he was very clever. He did what sort of like Jimmy Buffett and others have done. He created a lifestyle around his brand, and that Mexico, Cabo, San Lucas kind of lifestyle, and it fit with restaurants and his tequila and his mixers that he has and other things. So he's been brilliant in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we end up having to do here. We have to do it to kind of now in our new reconstituted world. We have to do stuff like that. I'm talking about selling merch and getting people to support us just to keep the lights on. But Hagar did such a good job merchandising himself just to, build his brand. And now it's done by so many others. I mean,
it's so true.
You look at George Clooney, and you look at some of these other celebrities who they also had a tequila brand, et cetera. Randy Gerber, I think, was with George. But the thing that is different is that it wasn't Clooney first. Hagar put himself out there, so he owned the brand, meaning he owned it with his personage, and he got out there, as you say, with the mixers and all the rest. So, you knew you were going to Sammy Hagar's place, and you were drinking his tequila, et cetera.
That's so true. And, he was very clever. Apparently, as he tells the story, the Van Halen brothers, the band, didn't particularly like him wearing shirts on stage that marketed his products. So they did appreciate that. So guess what he did, Mark and Kim? He got a tattoo that said Cabo Wabo. So they couldn't take it off. He took off the T-shirts and got an arm tattoo, I think.
Right. F with this, mother effers. Right.
Exactly.
By the way, the Quake, USGS is saying, we have it on the screen for you now, a 5.0 centered near Mount Hamilton, San Jose. 5.0 is not nothing,
No. We get a lot of 3s and 4s. So 5, you're starting to get up there where that's still in the mild or moderate category, I would think, or certainly moderate. But that's enough. It's a lot stronger than we usually see around here on a regular basis.
They say
so no wonder it's
7 miles deep.
That's good.
So, and there's the map of it. You can see it's in a neighborhood of the San Jose area called Seven Trees. And magnitude 5. They say they're calling it a 5.1 at this point. And of course, that's preliminary. But I'll say it took a little longer to get that information. Usually we get it really quick. And this one, it's taken a little time. So that's right near Mount Hamilton. And a lot of people around the Bay Area reported a jolt, feeling a little rock and rolling this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the kind of transmission of that seismic activity is something that is very different quake to quake, as you're aware. So, you can have a slip fault, which is like this. It kind of the ground goes like that under. It's happening way down in the ground, and you can have these transcurrent movements of the play. So, depending on that.
A little aftershock, a little 3.1. Look at that.
Wow. Yeah.
So and the other interesting thing to keep in mind, the difference between, say, a 5.0 and a 5.1 is actually more significant than it sounds. We sort of forget that. So a quake that's a 4.5 is not nearly as strong as a 5.0.
Such a good point. The Richter scale is it seems in this age of where everything is a scale and everything is an alert, and we've got a green, yellow, red situation, or we have new color palettes on COVID exposure, and all of that. It seems as though the Richter scale, I know it's the thing, I don't mean to take anything away from it, but as Dan says, it's so in a way it's tough to get your head around, because the movement in terms of severity from 4.5 to 5.0 is far greater than you would associate the movement being from 4.5 to 5.0. So I don't know. It seems I don't mean to be a rebel or un-American, but I'm just suggesting the Richter scale may have to be joined by another scale. That perhaps better reflects. The thing about living in the Bay Area or living in California or a seismically active area is you begin to know the shorthand of the Richter scale. So that, as you say, Dan, a 5.0 is in the moderate category and begins to be of greater concern. Generally, 3s and 4s, not so much.
Right. But, 3s and 4s, they get our attention, obviously, but you don't expect much damage other than maybe a few things knocked off shells, nothing significant. 5, you probably wouldn't get a lot of damage either, maybe just right underneath where it ruptured. But once it gets a little beyond that, certainly. But a 5 is certainly more significant than we see ordinarily around here.
We got a few chat texts coming in from people who got the notification on their phone again, just like we had it last time. John Watson said, "My phone made a ring I've never heard before. It was the earthquake notification alert." Yvonne says, "Yep, my Shake app went off before it even started." So a lot of people saying, yeah, they got the note just a few seconds before the earthquake hit in San Jose.
Well, Nikki does a show, the Nikki Maduro Show, which follows ours on the Nikki Maduro Show channel and right here on YouTube. And she says, this happened pretty much near my neighborhood.
Really? Wow. Funny
story about how I figured out it was an earthquake, and we'll talk about it when the show kicks off at noon. So she both related it to the quake and the current situation, and she promoted her show at the same time, and I have mad respect for that. Yeah, very well done. All right. Speaking of promoting, tell us about ABC7, what's going on, if they're meaning any special series or anything we need to know, any new shows, hours we can watch. This is we want to show you some love, Dan Ashley. So.
You guys are the best. I first of all, let me just say congratulations to you and to Kim and to everyone, Nikki, the whole crew coming over, starting this YouTube channel and carrying on. People love your show. I have to tell you, Mark, every time I would fill in for you, and you're always so kind to let me fill in, but every time I'd fill in for you, I cannot tell you how many people would come up to me in the days afterward and say, "Hey, heard you today. Love Mark. Nice hearing you on the show." I mean, it was remarkable. You made a real mark. So
great to hear.
I was always proud to be on there. Big shout out.
Okay, big shout out.
Big shout out. Is it live or Memorex?
Yeah,
I can't
I'm telling you.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on at ABC7. We have a lot. We have a streaming app now, and we're putting some terrific programming on that streaming app all the time. Of course, we'll be all over this earthquake today in the San Jose area, that 5.0. But we have an initiative that we call Building a Better Bay Area, and it really informs what we do every day, because we are sincerely out there trying to find stories and issues and causes that make a difference in our community and report on them and focus on problems, but not just problems, the solutions to those problems. So we've done a lot of reporting around that, and I'm very proud to be able to do that kind of work, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I also see the climate initiative that you guys have in terms of reporting on climate. I mean, I feel as though that's been an orphan story for too long, and I'd love to see a local media organization picking that up as aggressively you have. Spencer's been through, he's a friend of the show as well, and he talks about that. So many areas of concern, homelessness and the issues involving crime that affect all of the Bay Area. You have a lot on your plate already, so it's great to see you turning your attention to some of these other issues involving climate and beyond. in a way, the streaming is a great additional outlet. You know, you're not limited to an hour show or whatever it may be. You have another forum and platform for many of the stories that you want to do.
It's so true. And what's nice about it, it's 24/7, and we're not limited by time in terms of newscasts or the length of stories. As you well know, Mark, having been a veteran of television news in your prior life, you know, we have time limits. So that story needs to be 1 minute and 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is. They can be whatever they need to be on streaming. So it's a really great chance to kind of explore these stories in a even more full way, which is fun to do.
Well, we love. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, I'm just so fortunate. Like you, Mark and Kim, I've done the job I've always wanted to do, and I've been very fortunate to do it. So,
well,
I just would like it noted that you may be going to ABC7 to do a big newscast tonight, but you know where you broke the earthquake right here on the Mark Thompson show.
Well, you can maybe mention it on Mark's new show. It might be awkward to mention it, come to think of it.
If I can work it in, I promise you I will.
I don't know. I mean, maybe just go with big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah, and then you're going to say, hey.
I mean, how often do you get to break news with the chief anchor for the Bay Area? Like, that's cool.
We feel very lucky. So very cool, Dan Ashley. All right, we watch you on ABC7, and we look forward to your next visit. Thanks for hanging out and talking about stuff that we were really curious about. I was so glad we got into that figure skating thing because I was dying to ask you some questions about it. So really,
you're
cool.
So great. Well, please have me back anytime. I'm thrilled with what you guys are doing. So happy for you, and keep on keeping on because you're just doing something great. People love what you do.
Rock and roll, my friend. Thanks, Dan Ashley.
Thanks, Dan Ashley.
So long, Dan Ashley.